going to talk about LAN security. Let's see who's on the call. Participant. We have you. We have you, but the majority did not join yet. I don't know why. Let me see if I can send them. Let's see. What is the. I don't know why they cannot join. Or hello, meeting info. Okay, so that's my meeting info. I don't know. Anyway, so we send the information to everybody, except maybe they use different emails. I don't know. Chat. Okay. So today we're going to talk about LAN security, which is module 10. So when we talk about LAN security, not just network security, LAN. Just when we say LAN, what we mean. Let's see if I can open LAN security. Basically, what? Somebody saying something?
Local area security?
Yeah, local area. So that's basically pretty much we talk about the data link layer in general. Let's see. Let me log into your, well, Cisco. Let's see. Because what they say, I mean, when we talk about network security, is a wide topic, and you need like courses to deal with these issues. But they talk about LAN because they said the most vulnerable layer of the OSI model when it comes to security is the data link layer. And we're going to see why in a few minutes. So, because you have all the endpoint devices, the endpoint devices connected to that. So, and that's what we're going to talk about. This is the objective. Explain how to use endpoint security to mitigate attacks. You can use the access control, which is explain how a AAA and 802.1x are used to authenticate LAN endpoints and devices. This is basically they talking about the radius attacker server, which is they use before you access any end devices, you're supposed to authenticate through the AAA server. They're going to talk about layer 2 security threats. Yes, layer 2 security threat. Layer 2 has a lot of security threats. The MAC address table attack. This is where these attackers basically send some kind of with software to flood the MAC address table, and that will cause denial of service. So this is a lot of. This is also works in the data link layer. LAN attacks, explain how LAN attacks compromise LAN security. So we're gonna discuss all this today. So I was trying to get to your. Here it is. I got it. I guess. the modules, let's say chapter 10. Let's see. So, now why are they talking about this one in particular on the LAN? Because most of and the LAN operates, like we said, on the data link layer. Most of the other or the upper layer, which is layer 3, 4, and 5, and the upper layer, pretty much are protected. And if somebody want to get to those layers, they have to go through what? Through layer 2 first. Okay? So they have to go through the endpoint first. So once they get to the endpoint, okay, they can cause harm to the others. So what they're talking about here, distributed denial of service, which is DDoS. This is basically you will have a combination of devices participating in attack to a particular network to bring it down. And this is what called the zombies. So this is a coordinated attack from many devices called zombies with the intention of degrading or halting public access to an organization's website and resources. And that's what happened one time. I don't know, to the Amazon website. Like, for example, if you launch an attack from multiple places in the same time, and they're trying to access or ping or whatever, okay, certain server is going to bring it down. So that's what I mean by that. Data breach, this is an attack in which an organization data servers or hosts are compromised to steal confidential information. Now, most of the attacks that related to security it has a financial motive. Now, sometimes we have some kind of attacks just to cause harm. That's it. Somebody is bored, or especially it happened in the summertime when the students off, have nothing to do. They said, okay, let's try this, let's try that. And this is, it happened. But most of the professional attacks, the main motive is financial motive. To gain access to confidential information, like, for example, social security numbers, credit cards, and they have a lot of example about that. I don't know, years back they attacked Home Depot, Target, not long time ago. So the main motive is financial. And a lot of time out of this, for example, they use a false, or they call identity theft. So once they have your personal information, they can do some kind of identity theft. They can pretend that and they can order credit cards or whatever. So that's a problem. And they have another I should say, another popular threat, which is malware. And this is an attack in which an organization's hosts are infected with malicious software that cause a variety of problems. Like, for example, ransomware, such as WannaCry, encrypts the data on the host and locks access to it until a ransom is paid. So basically, they encrypt everything, and you cannot access the information you want. And you're talking about it happened to many big companies. So we're going to see, and usually it's done by launching the software or injecting some information in false email, and the user clicked on it, or whatever ways. And this is what we call malware. So how are you going to protect all these threats? So you need to make sure to protect the LAN, or the data link layer in specifically. Of course, physical security is a must too, because once they get to your network, they can do a lot of different things. Um, yeah, that ransomware was an issue. So especially if you don't have a backup for your data to say, okay, take encrypted data, I have another data. But if you don't have a backup, that's a problem. I know recently a friend of mine, his relative works in New York with big corporations. They get that attack with the ransomware. So they have to pay, I think, more than $500,000 to get their information back. And they have no backup to the data. So that's a dangerous. Okay, so let's talk about the endpoints. Oh, we talked about this one here. Network security devices, basically, and that's what it's talk about. The various network security devices are required to protect the network perimeter from outside access. Well, this is the common mistake people do, especially when it comes to security. They think this threat is from the outside. Okay? Most of the threats come from, or the vulnerability, I should say, from the inside. And this has a lot of reasons and different methods. And that's why people work on social engineering. Some people walk around, they flip the keyboard to see if they have a password. I mean, they have their ways to get in. But the other layers from the outside is protected by encrypted of the VPN routers. They have firewalls. They have network access control. So they have a lot of different tools that they can protect it. But you always have weak points. So to protect yourself from any attacks, you need to study your weak points and you need to improve them. This is where you build your defenses. Looking at the weak points. The weak points basically is in the LAN. So I don't know what kind of prevention we can have. For example, if somebody comes to our classroom, let's say, and instead unplug the computer, let's say, and plug like a router, okay, and start issuing IP addresses to all the network, and they can force everybody on that segment to get the IP address from his router. Then he can set a machine, and every packet that user use to go to the internet or whatever information he can sniff it, he can see it. So and that happens a lot. So network security devices, it's very much they protect the upper layers, but the weak point is in the data link layer. That's the weakest point, which is basically the LAN, not the WAN. I know companies, they pay millions of dollars on a lot of security appliances to improve security. Especially like we're talking about a next generation firewall. That's is very, very smart firewall. Basically, it studies the behaviors of any packet. It's basically you profiling the packet, the source of the packet. And that's what they call provide stateful packet inspection. If that packet it's coming from bad source or have a bad reputation of the source, before it reaches your network, the firewall will knows about it and they build defenses against it. So we don't have the problem defending the WAN from the outside, but get to the LAN, that's a major threat. Now, of course, they still have smaller company. They cannot afford to have a next generation firewall or intrusion prevention system. If you don't have all that stuff, or advanced malware protection, IMP, or URL filtering, because attackers usually they fool the user. They send them false information through emails or whatever, or sometimes they do social engineering through phone calls just to get information. So what they do first, they gather information and also get network access control, which include authentication, authorization, and accounting. And that's basically what we use at AAA service. And you have a different types of service for that. We're going to talk about it. They have TACUS and they have Radius server. And basically what that means is if you're trying to access resources from the outside, so you need to authenticate to the server first. Then after you log in to the server, okay, the server is going to tell you what you authorize, what you can do in that server. That's the authorization. And the other part, which is the accounting, it's used for audit. Okay, what you did, what you're doing. And this is for auditing purposes. And that's what they talk about in, like for example, if I am here, I want to access, let's say, my switch or my router. I don't have to go SSH from my machine straight to the router or switch. I have to go through the authentication server first, okay? Then from there, I can access the router. So they have like multiple line of defenses before you get to the device. So I know they use a lot of acronyms in here. For example, NAC, Network Access Control, which is they talk about, includes the AAA, which is authentications, authorization, and accounting. And for test purposes, you need to know each one of them, what that mean. Authentication, basically, you need to prove who you are. Okay, you need to identify yourself to log in. Authorization means what you are authorized to do, okay, once you log in. And the accounting is used for audit. What did you click? What did you do? Okay, so everything will be logged about all your actions, whatever you did on that particular server, okay? So and that's what we use for audit. Any question at this point? I guess not, huh? And that's what it's saying. Large enterprise, these services might be incorporated into an appliance that can manage access policies across a wide variety of users and device types. Cisco Identity Service Engine, ISE, some people call it ICE, is an example of a NAC device. And this is very popular appliance Cisco sell. They call it ICE for that. Cisco, by the way, has a lot of products. Sometimes they talk about so many products and say, man, it's confusing. Each one what it does. I wish they have them in one box and that's it. And that's what they're talking about. Endpoints are hosts which commonly consist of laptops, desktop servers, IP phones, as well as employee-owned devices. And this is another problem. Most of the users cause a lot of or lack of knowledge in some of the users cause a lot of threats. So, especially after they come up with their idea, bring your own device, like, boy, that even increase the threats. And that's what they say. Endpoints are particularly susceptible to malware-related attacks that originate through email or web browsing. How many times we receiving emails and we don't know. Sometimes they cover it in a nice way. Like, for example, they say chase.org or whatever. You think it's Chase. If you have an account with Chase or any bank, okay, they're going to send you a fake email, okay, to take some of the information, to fish some of the information. Or they like malware to encrypt your data or whatever. And that's basically they're talking about the endpoints have typically used traditional host-based security features such as antivirus, anti-malware, host-based firewall, and host-based intrusion prevention system. Endpoints today are best protected by a combination of NAC, anti-malware software, and email security appliance, ECA, and web security appliance, which is true. But not everybody has this kind of protection. But in the big companies, big organization is yes. And it's not only vulnerability on the even on software, like how many version of Windows we have on the last 10 years. Now, why do you think they change those? They change on not only the threats in the operating system itself, also in the browser. Okay, so they enhance the quality of the browser too. So you need to build defenses by eliminating your weaknesses or strengthening your weaknesses, because what the attackers do, they gather information. They need to know what kind of operating system you have, what kind of operating system you have, for example, what kind of browser that operating system use. So they study all this, and then they say, okay, what's the weaknesses of all these components they gather? And that's how they launch their attacks. Let's see. Question at this point. And Cisco email. We'll talk about the Cisco email appliances. Cisco, they have something called ESA, which is email security appliances, which is monitors the Cisco protocol, which is a simple mail transfer protocol. So the Cisco ESA is constantly updated by real-time feeds from Cisco Talos, which is basically the way it works. It's worldwide. They, like, for example, if they find a threat's coming from specific spot in the world, so before it reach, let's say, United States, okay, that particular ESA will be updated against that threat. You follow what I'm saying? So that's basically how they do it. And this goes also for the next generation firewall. So they profile in the source, where that information is coming, and they want to say if they have a threat for this one here, so they build defenses before they reach the other networks. And that's what they say, which detects and correlates threats and solution by using worldwide database monitoring system. And that's the difference. Sometimes they ask you a question, okay, what antivirus I should buy for my machine? And that's a valid question because you want to see that company that sells you the antivirus, how big this company is, and is this company had resources worldwide? Because because if the company doesn't have the resources, let's say we have a virus coming from certain part of the world, and if this particular company is local and have no clue about it, so that means it's going to reach over here, and those guys that have no defense against it. But if they have a research worldwide, and that's basically before it gets to your machine over here, we have the defenses for that particular virus or so. This threat intelligence data is pulled by Cisco ESA every 3 to 5 minutes. You see that? Let's say something happened. Cisco knows about it. Something happened, let's say, or a threat's coming from, let's say, North Korea or whatever part of the world. And before it gets to the United States, okay, so the ESA is going to know about it and it's going to update all their appliances in like what? 3 to 5 minutes. Real time. I'm talking about real time. That's big. See? Now, before that, we don't have all this appliances. We don't have that luxury in defenses. And the reason why, I mean, I can understand why, because people don't want to pay millions of dollars to build defenses because network back then wasn't that popular. It wasn't in demand. But now everything we do in life depends on it, on network. There's no industry in the whole universe does not depend on technology, and that's scary. It's even given scary now because we have the Internet of Things. Can you imagine your cars now is going to be? It is part of Internet of Things, and people can control it from somewhere. So, and now we're gonna depend on. They talk about like put your car on autopilot, and you go to sleep, and the car will drive you. What happened if somebody attacks it? I don't know. Just go all like speculation, but it could happen. What I'm trying to say is we depend heavily on technology, so we need to have the tools to make it secure. That's why the trend today is cybersecurity. Cybersecurity is a wide topic. So there are some of the functions of Cisco ESA block known threats. Yeah, that's basically you do your job, okay? You're basic. You cover your ground. You hear that term, cover your basic first. So what does cover your basic mean? Means if we already known about threats, if this threats has been here for a long, long time, at least we need to cover those threats, the common threats. Before we go build defenses or think about defenses of new threats, at least we need to cover the old threats, the well-known threats. Remediate against stealth malware that evaded initial detections. Discard email with bad links. Now, how you know if your email has bad links or infected sites? Like, sometimes they send you an email, like I did one time. Somebody sent me an email from lctcs.com. Well, LCTCS is our main office in Baton Rouge, which is the Louisiana Technical and Community College system in the whole state. We don't use .com. We use .edu. You follow? But they're trying to They know we work on the we're part of the LCTCS, so they send an email. Now, if you don't read your email carefully, and if you don't pay attention to that link.com instead of .edu, the same name, the name is correct, but the only thing is different is the .edu and the .com. So I knew right away this is not really coming from LCTCS. So I have to call the main office in Baton Rouge. I called the IT department, said, "Did you send me that email, by the way?" "No, that's a threat. Don't click on it." I say, "I know, that's why I'm calling." So before you click on an email, you need to make sure you have the source. Now, what you can do sometimes, you can click on that, not click. You can highlight that link, copy it, and paste it on the browser, and see what it takes you. They have some kind of they have some what do you call, some application Cisco sell against this one. They call it something to do with DNS. I forgot the name of it. So basically, that test it that URL is valid URL or not, or a legit URL or not. Okay, so they have some kind of product to test that. The other thing is block access to newly infected site. Yep. This is, you need to make sure you don't need to block access to newly infected site. Encrypt content in outgoing email to prevent data loss. And this is not new. If you think you have important information, you need to make sure you encrypt your email. And that's, but usually people that have sensitive data, especially websites and stuff, they use HTTPS instead of HTTP. And this is not new. Like I used to have a computer company, and in 1995, 94, I believe, and somebody comes in and said, "Well, I need to protect my email." He was working with an oil company in Latin America, some other, I forget the place, and he need to make sure he send an email and need to be encrypted. That was in 19 what? 95, 90, 95, 94. So encryption it's been around for a long, long, long time. So you have to take precautions, whatever you do. To now we have Cisco Web Security Appliance is another one. So the Cisco Web Security Appliance is a mitigation technology for web-based threats. It helps organizations address challenges of securing internal web traffic. The Cisco WSA, which is a web security appliance, combine advanced malware protection, application visibility, and control acceptable use policy control and reporting. So you can see a lot of appliances. Now, some of these appliances are physical appliances. Some of them are what? Virtual. You can put them on any virtual machines. So we did a couple of them. We have, like, for example, spam filter. We used to have a spam filter. I don't know if they changed it or not. Made by a company called Barracuda, which is installed on the VM virtual machines. So there's a lot of different tools in there just for security. I don't know. Sometimes it's like we have too many products deal with security. Sometimes that you wonder, do I need all that stuff? And the answer is yes, because to stay protected, you have to. And it's not, and anytime you come up with tools that the hackers goes around it. So I don't know, keep us like a ongoing business. But you have to protect your organization by implementing. You have to take implementing a strategy or policy, a security policy first, to cover your ground. And the first steps you need to take to stay secure, you start with your policies, security policies. And knowing your threat and cover your ground. Cover the well-known threats. So the WS can perform blacklisting of URL filtering, malware, scanning URL, categorization, web application filtering, and encryption and decryption of web traffic. So those are tools, basically, to help to stay secure. Authentication with local password, like Lime VTY, zero password Cisco, login. Well, instead using like regular telnet, I can use what? SSH, or you can use access list to block anybody to telnet to your device, okay, or to your network. You can actually write access list on your router to do that. Or you can do, for example, SSH. But how are you going to implement SSH? It's security is a lot of, how I say, it's like your puzzles you put together. It's because, okay, I want to implement SSH, but I have an old switch with an iOS that does not support SSH. So you need to make sure your device is up to date and you are using the right devices first. You are using the right version of iOS first. Okay, so and the last thing you need to do, you need to make sure you configure your devices correctly. Because sometimes we have a good devices, but it's not configured correctly. Or I'm not using the proper protocol correctly. So, and this is a good example. Instead using telnet, which is a clear text, anybody in the middle can use Wireshark and they can see the password you put and the username you put. So if I have the password and username, guess what? I can access that particular device from anywhere. And I can cause all kind of denial of service or whatever you want to call it. Or I can hijack it and I will be man in the middle. Every piece of information going through, I can see it. So that's why you have to use SSH. If it's possible, is a more secure from a remote access. It requires username and password. The username and password can be authenticated locally. That's the two things, the two different things you can, like they say, authenticated locally, which is not recommended, okay? Or you can use the local database method that has some limitation, the local one. User account must be configured locally on each device, which is not scalable. So, for example, I'm going to use SSH to communicate with my router. Then I'm going to use SSH to communicate with my switch. Now, when I do locally, that means I'm going to store the information on the switch, on the router, on this switch, on that router. So if I have multiple devices, I'm storing my information on each different device. So it's not centralized. And I have only one line of defense. But when I have a AAA server, I'm going to authenticate to the server first, which is, I'm going to use the same password, same whatever, and it's not stored locally on the router. It's stored in the server itself, on the radius server or tax server. Now, when I authenticate to the server, then from the server, I can SSH or communicate with my devices. So it's two-way. Any question at this point? Are you guys still there?
Yes.
All right. Any question?
No, sir.
No, sir.
Okay. And that's what they talk about, the AAA components. Let me see. Let me see. I'm going to give you the two common servers they use for AAA beside ICE. Let's see. We go into Word documents right here. So if I were you, I will go to the website and see the differences between AAA radius and DACUS, which is a different between the two, and you can select which one is better. Okay. So from encryption perspective and from protocol perspective, because like for example, radius use UDP and transport layer protocol. DACUS use TCP. They have a different port number. Radius encrypt password only. DACUS encrypts the entire communication. So this has more security. But always you jeopardize security with performance, because this has more overhead. So those are the two we use for AAA. So it's good to know the characteristic of each one of them. So do some research on on these two and see the difference between them. So they say AAA stands for authentication, authorization, and accounting, as we discussed before, and provides the primary framework to set up access control on a network device. So, like for example, I can VPN to my AAA server. I can authenticate. Once I authenticate, I want to see what I can do, and that's what they say. What they can do while they are there. That's what the authorized means. And as we talked about the accounting, basically the audit. You audit the action they perform while accessing the network. And this is what, because it doesn't matter what kind of strategy you have, how much security you have, if you don't audit, if you don't monitor and audit, it's all the measurements is worthless. All the security measurements you took is worthless, because you need to see, you need to monitor, you need to audit. Like for example, part of the audit, if somebody doesn't have permission, they say, to access certain confidential information, and he's trying to access that particular folder. If you don't have an audit, you're not gonna see why, or you're not gonna know this person X or Y or Z is trying to access a confidential information. So you need to audit. Let's see. And that's what we talked about, the local AAA authentication, usually on the Cisco router, local database. That's why, I don't know if you remember when we did SSH, and when you configure SSH, you put the transport something local, means the information is on a local machine, on a local device, on a local router, not pointed to a radius server. The server-based AAA authentication use the server-based method. The router access a central database, a central server, AAA server. The AAA server contains the username and password for all users because you need to know who's logging in and what time. So that's a good thing to do. The router uses either the remote authentication dial-in user services, which is a long name, and this is abbreviated by radius. Okay, so that's what we call radius server. And usually they use, like we talked about, they use a UDP as a transport layer protocol. And I think they use specific ports, 1812 to 1813 and other ports. And we have another AAA server, which is Terminal Access Controller. Terminal Access Controller, Controller Access Control System. It's called TACS. Or TACS, I don't know. TACS, I guess. Protocol to communicate with the AAA. And usually this particular server, they use TCP as a transport protocol, and they use port number 49. And they have encryption for all the conversation. On the first one, on the radius, they only encrypt the password. That's it. But the rest of the conversation is not encrypted. So, which one is more secure? Of course, the terminal access control controller access system, because they encrypt the entire conversation, the entire communications. When there are multiple routers and switches, server-based AAA is more appropriate because you don't want to store information on a different device. You need to centralize the management. Usually what you do, if you want, you can put, you can go to that server and you put SSH. Once you go to this server, then you can remotely access the SSH to the switch or router. Now they talk about the same thing in here, like authorization. You need to know what authorization means. There's a couple of questions on the test. One of them is authorization. What else? Authentication, authorization, and accounting. Yeah, we skipped one. That's one. Authentication first. Oh, we did that. Authorization, AAA authorization is automatic and does not require user to perform additional steps. After authentications, authorization govern that what user can and cannot do on the network after they are authentication. Think about it like a permission. What I can do after I logged in, what I can do. So authorization uses a set of attributes that describe the user access to the network. Basically, once I logged in, I'm supposed to have some kind of token, what I can do, what privilege do I have on the network. And that's basically what the authorization is for. After authorization, you have the accounting, which is a AAA accounting, collect and report users' data. But it's like a log. Everything you do, every steps you do after you authenticate, okay, is going to be logged in. And the log is going to include the successful attempts and the failure attempts. Okay, anything you do is going to be logged. Okay, so, and that's what the accounting for. So, and that's what they say. A primary use of accounting is to combine it with AAA authentication. The AAA server keeps a detailed log, as we talked about, of exactly what the authenticated user does on the device, as shown in the figure, which is this include all execution and configuration command is issued by the user. So anything you do after you logged in, okay, it's going to be on the log. It's going to be logged for audit purposes. If somebody said, well, I logged in, but I didn't do anything, okay, let's go see the log, see what you did. And that's basically what that's for. The access control, which is defined by the IEEE 82.1x standard, is a port-based access control and authentication protocol. This protocol restricted unauthorized workstation from connecting to LAN through a publicly accessible switch port or ports, and the authentication server. The authentication server authenticate each workstation that is connected to which port before making available any services offered by the switch to the LAN. So this is really secure. So the with the 822x port-based authentication, the device in the network have specific rules. For example, the first one, which is a client. This is device running 802.1x compliant client software, which is available for wired or wireless device. It's basically you need the client need to have permission to access. Okay. The switch, basically the authenticator. So you have the client and you have the supplicant, which is the client, and you have the authenticator. In this case, will be the switch. This switch acts as intermediary between the client and the authentication server. It requests identifying information from the client, verifies the information with the authentication server, and relays a response to the client. Another device that could act as authenticator is a wireless access point. We use the same thing instead of the switch. That's why we have a wireless access controller. The wireless access controller basically controls all the access point. Now, in order to access the wireless access controller, you can go through the same performance. You go to AAA server. The AAA server will be authenticator. Now, if you don't have that, also you can have you can manage all your access point through the wireless access controller instead of going to each access point by itself. And the same thing, like for example, when you guys go to school, okay, and you want to access your wireless, it's going to prompt you to put your username and password. The username and password is not stored in the wireless access point you're trying to access. Your username and password will be located in the database on the authenticator, which is in this case will be your AAA server, Radius server. So that's a very important to understand 82.1x and to understand the AAA, the function of the AAA. Any question at this point? Okay. Really, the meat of this chapter is in the second half. This is where we can do some exercise. So what we're gonna do, I'm gonna stop right here and we'll start fresh topic tomorrow on layer 2 security threats. How about that?
Sounds good to me.
Sounds good to you. Sounds good to me. Sounds good to everybody. I don't know. What do you think?
Yeah.
All righty. I'll see you tomorrow.
All right, Mr. Charif. Thank you so very much.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.